Welcome Nick to the stage. Hey there, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am doing very good. I'm super excited to have you with us today. And Carlotta, can we change to just the big ones? Oh my God, that's really close. um, yeah, so first up, tell me about UFO, Nick. What is UFO for folks who are not aware?
Yeah. So again, thanks for having me today. UFO is a global radio network, very much built on the on-chain stack, coming developing it as like a portal for artists, DJs, global culture scenes and stuff into the open internet. And so it's kind of like a meeting in between these two things. At the same time, like it is simply like an internet radio network that happens to be the use case in the project that we're building. And it's kind of a perfect match for Livepeer, of course, for the live streaming and all that infra. And it's coming along at a very interesting time, along with things in the sort of on-chain social realm, like Farcaster and so on. And this whole like new modes of distribution that can be unlocked through the sort of on-chain stack, if you like. So it's a really interesting design space. But very simply, UFO, we're here to make great media and become a place for global music on the internet.
Awesome. Super cool. And if I'm looking down, just talking with the team behind the scenes. Um, Very, very cool. So I know you guys recently did an SPE, and I just wanted to kind of check in on how that's going, for you to have a chance to explain to the wider ecosystem, and our audience, like what you're doing there.
Yeah, for sure. So for those uninitiated, I'm sure most everyone here are live peer community, but SPEs are like working groups that are funded by like live peer protocol and governance process. And so the focus of Harmonic SPE is running point on ecosystem development for live peer into these on-chain social networks like Farcaster and connection to ecosystems such as Base, Coinbase Wallet, and everything in between. Like our feeling. Oh, also, and by the SPE, we're also like shipping the prototype of the UFO mini app, so bringing broadcasting and streaming directly into Farcaster and into Coinbase Wallet beyond that, potentially reaching these audiences and users in the millions and whatever. So it's kind of it's new, it's experimental. As part of the SPE, it's building essentially like open repos, public goods, and like testing, experimenting, building stuff out, and then documenting how it's done and encouraging other projects that want to be doing stuff with video and streaming and things like that to definitely build with Livepeer.
Awesome. One question that I've been interested in, we'll touch on this first, and then we'll go into some other things you had mentioned. Um, why are decentralized radio stations important? What was kind of the thesis there, or the inspiration for you in thinking to create something like this?
Yeah, it's a super interesting question because I think like radio happens to be a thing that has this whole cultural history, like pirate radio and alternate signals and very community based, bottom up culture kind of vibe, and it is a very internet native kind of counterculture kind of energy that radio has always had about it. It's funny now because radio is a kind of a mildly antiquated analog feeling kind of medium at this point, but it's also like a sort of a raw open signal, like a synchronous feed that people can tune in together and experience at the same time, which I think is super valuable as we live in a culture where we experience everything in an isolated way, whether it's like a Netflix or listening to a
Mm,
podcast or streaming music or whatever. It's an individual experience, whereas radio or going to the movies or something is something that we can share together, or like a concert or a festival or things like this. So radio still has that potential and energy. I've been like in the crypto blockchain space for a fair while, and before that, I came like it was like 2017 that I started. Um, yeah, at the time. So and before that, I came or come from like radio, music, media, creative industries kind of background. So the first thing I did when I got into the crypto space was like start a podcast and doing that, producing media and doing things. Um, and I had like a decade or so in radio in Sydney and Australia back when. So having that experience of being part of a radio station that has like 100 DJs and labels and people who throw parties, and like that whole kind of scene is a super resonant experience, and also one that many people, did college radio and stuff
Right,
like that
right,
back in the
right.
day, right? So I'd had that whole experience, and then so coming along in crypto and over the years, I would say like the technology, the stack, the protocols, all this stuff has sort of caught up to the potential for a radio network use case.
Right.
Like we can do it now. So I've kind of been experimenting and working in the space all in between, and now it's kind of like, it's launch time for this idea. Like the tech stack is here,
Right.
and I also have a bit of that. What would you say? Kind of cultural sense or fervor in favor of kind of the open internet.
Right,
and
right, right,
whatever.
right.
And, I feel like it's extremely important, and maybe it's ultimately the future of the where that things will go.
Right.
That all of our spaces right now are kind of governed by algorithms and so on.
Right.
The problems of deplatforming, or that musicians and artists can't make money in the streaming, or whatever the situation is. So like I feel like a lot of the answers are based in some of these like open protocols and new ways of building things. There's been a lot of interesting experiments over the last 5-10 years, sort of in the culture space and doing things like that. But I really feel like there's something here that's like a return to, let's say, the blog era, or internet pirate radio and all that kind of thing. And sort of being able to build something like this, which can also be overlaid with like an open social graph. So you could have like a universal ID that follows you across all these many media ecosystems and next gen kind of social networks and stuff. So I think there's many reasons to be sort of curious about it and inspired.
And I didn't write this question down, but it's something I'm interested in hearing from you about is how do we get people on board with this like idea of a decentralized radio station, this idea of, the kind of new internet? What would be how would you pitch people on that? What has your experience been in trying to get people to understand why that might be important?
I think I can maybe answer this with like what we're thinking to do next, and kind of
what
the plan is. So with the radio network, it's like there's a dozen, like 12, 15 or so channels that are already like live and part of the network. So that could be artists, DJs, labels, clubs, culture scenes, stuff like that, right?
Right.
And like that is channels. So our plan going forward is starting out with this initial cohort and then having an open application, doing like quarterly intakes of a bunch more channels from around the world and stuff. And so at least in that way, we can help really inspired. I had a great experience with a project called Meta Label a few years ago, and they did a cohort-based program called Assembly, where they brought together like 20, roughly Meta Label looking projects together, and had this really interesting thing for a month where it was like group calls, workshops, sessions, guest speakers, like really cool. I'm thinking to do something similar with UFO, where it's like we're onboarding these channels all together. We can bring them up to speed on the tech, how it works, stream, how to like bring stuff to the archive and all that kind of thing. And then also give them the tools to onboard their friends and communities and stuff. So it's a bit of the kind of the bottom up approach to kind of network and community building. It's like giving people the tools, and then, it'd be great to see. It's like channels on UFO could well spring up their own radio network or publication or label or whatever, kind of built on this stack. I feel like when people can enter the space and kind of experiment and be creative. And I think it's also maybe just like standing something up that kind of works, and then we can tell the story of it, and other people may be interested to try, to tap into what might be on-chain distribution, social graphs and stuff.
Yeah, I've been really toying with this idea of the productization of Livepeer's network, and I think that you guys are also a standout example of kind of that happening, of getting people into this like on-chain movement, whether they realize that or not. So to that point, how has your experience building on Livepeer been, and maybe what advice do you have for those eyeing Livepeer's ecosystem? I know we've had a kind of big moment over the weekend. So for kind of folk coming in saying, like, how do I get involved? How do I build? Yeah, give them your best advice there.
Yeah, well, I'd say like showing up in the Discord is kind of a great place to start. Like tapping into the community of builders who are here, of course.
Right.
My experience has been phenomenal Like we built like the 1.0 of the UFO radio like on Livepeer last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then since then, and through the SPE that we've started this year or a few months ago, collaborating with Pablo from StreamEth, who I know was on,
Yep.
who was the AMA last week, I believe, and he was talking about this a little bit too.
Mm.
So we're very much like, I mean, I'm very fortunate to be collaborating with Pablo because he's a very experienced builder on Livepeer and everything, and having built StreamEth, which is like the major streaming platform for kind of DevCon and like large events and live streams and things like that. So we're kind of teaming up and jamming on this like radio use case, and we can kind of use a lot of what exists in the way that StreamEth is built. And what we're looking to do there, as Pablo was talking about last week, is kind of building out these open repos of what is sort of like an open source, like CMS type thing. So it's Livepeer is the video piece of the stack, but it's like going a little deeper with say metadata and all this cool stuff. So then it can kind of also, it's like putting this other Lego block together with it.
Yeah, so tell people a bit more about the integration of the UFO mini app into Farcaster. Maybe a timeline there if you have it, or what that will look like. What's your thesis there?
Yeah, for sure. So for people who might not be on Farcaster at this point, basically like mini apps are previously known as frames, but basically mini apps that exist in that ecosystem and then also across in Coinbase Wallet because they've integrated Farcaster.
Okay, cool.
And so on. And so there's this whole like rich scene of people shipping, creating these mini apps, which might be little games or lots of different things that people are playing around with. There's a great one called Acid Test from a friend of mine, Matthew from onchain, which is basically...
Oh, yeah, I know Matthew. He's cool.
Yeah, so his radio show that he started recently, radio show podcast kind of thing. So he built a mini app for that as a way to distribute it
cool.
and like mint episodes and do stuff. So like mini apps basically bring a whole lot of, along with the native wallet that exists in Farcaster now as well. It's like people can interact with these things in real time, collect things or play a game to win tokens, or like there's a whole bunch. It's sort of like a whole new design space that's happening. And so as far as like the UFO mini app, it's like we want to bring radio broadcasting straight in to Farcaster, Coinbase Wallet, and other ecosystems into the future. And with some things that have been updated at the protocol level, it's like you can be on Farcaster, which kind of looks like Twitter and a few other things thrown together. But you can be playing like radio or tuning into a live stream on UFO, and then you can have that in a little pop-out window and otherwise go about your day on like basically the play in background vibe. So for us, it's a really interesting opportunity to try and like, tap into those social networks, bring on a bunch of channels who are in that ecosystem as well. There's a lot of exciting stuff that can be done with the mini app. And of course, on the Livepeer side, it's just like as many streams as possible, as larger audience as possible, and allowing like channels to basically to use Livepeer out of the box, just built into the UFO studio interface. So it's all done, and we can kind of grow it in that way. But yeah, mini apps super early, and the timeline. So we're looking like within the next like 2 months, less than 2 months. That's what I'll say.
Okay, very cool. So we're running in the last minute, and I have 2 more questions, and I do want to get them. I want you to answer these.
Sure.
What does censor resistance mean to you? It's kind of a question I've been asking all of the guests, and curious how that speaks to you.
Did you say censorship resistance?
Yeah, censorship resistance, censor resistance.
Oh, gotcha. Hugely important, and a huge reason why I think like this whole thing is so vital and actually not optional. The open internet thing, building on these new rails, considering the state of the internet present day, it couldn't be more vital to kind of build on, as you might say, censorship resistant, but just like resilient networks in general that are governed and controlled by their contributors.
Awesome. And to wrap up, tell people where they can find you, handles on social media, and then also tell us in a quick 30 seconds where UFO is heading.
For sure. So you can find me on Twitter or at Hollins on Farcaster. There's the UFO channel on Farcaster as well, UFO Club on Twitter. So you can find us around, and the site is at ufo.fm. And where we're headed in the future, there's some exciting like live streams, live events coming up in collaboration with Refraction and the AI Artists SPE, and other cool things like that. But otherwise, we're basically heads down building and then bringing out a whole bunch of broadcasts and channels over the next couple of months. And also look out for the application for channels that's coming up as well. Love for folks to get involved and like drop into my DMs anytime if you want to talk Livepeer or anything else.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nick, and wishing you the best for all of the with the app and the SPE and the new channel initiative you're running.